casino employees, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen? Desperate bets? Drunken fights? Insane winnings? Let's hear some good stories. I'm not a casino employee, but I am a degenerate gambler. If you hang around in casinos enough, you get to see people completely lose their temper. It's fairly common for innocent card dealers cussed out for no reason, or people getting dragged away by security for being abusive. The best thing I've ever seen was a morbidly obese man, I'm guessing 500 plus pounds, throw a chair across a poker table at a small Asian dude. The fat man was thinking about his hand and the Asian dude said, "Hurry it up, fatty," and the big guy completely lost his sheet. The best part was when security came and the guy yells he called Demi fat. And about 3 people responded, "You are fat." Why do I imagine Mr. Wong from Futurama doing this? I worked as a croupier in an Australian casino many years ago. I saw heaps of sheet. But the best was a lady playing Caribbean stud poker against the house. If anyone is unfamiliar with the game, it is essentially a live version of a poker machine. You bet. You get dealt a hand. And if your hand is better than the dealer's, then you win. There is no skill, as you cannot trade cards or adjust your bet. You can win jackpots if you get dealt higher than a flush, with a royal flush netting you the entire jackpot. Anyway, this lady was playing the game. She was there for a while. And her husband was nearby playing a poker machine. Late into the night, the lady got visibly excited. She'd obviously netted a jackpot hand. Before she could place her bet though, she picked up her cards and walked over to her husband to show her what she'd been dealt. The big problem here is that, as this game is the only game at the casino where you can touch the cards, the house is very strict about you taking them off the table. I'm yelling at her to stay put as soon as she starts to move, but she ignores me in her excitement. I call over management, who has to break the news to her. The house will not pay out her jackpot as she has broken their rules. Rules which are very clearly displayed, and which croupiers constantly remind the players. The lady gets angry, but her husband becomes enraged and smashes a beer bottle across her head, calling her all manner of names. Police and ambulance and called. People escorted away. Back to dealing cards. Turns out the lady had been dealt a royal flush. She would have won over $200,000 if she'd kept her cards on the friggin' table. I was at the roulette wheel, down $40, when a guy comes in and puts $100 straight up on number 34. The wheel came up on 34. He got $3,500 in chips without any emotion. Then he walked away. My mother works at Foxwoods Casino and has seen people pissing and cheating themselves because they did not want to leave the table. Witnessed a college kid blow all his loans and fall to the floor crying as the casino bought him a bus ticket home. Talked a fellow employee down from the roof on the phone after he threatened to jump. He later healed himself at home. Seen the same people for months on end. They gamble and sleep on the benches. Ridden an elevator with Frank Sinatra. He was playing that night. That's all I got. A bus ticket. How kind. I worked as a housekeeper in a casino over a summer long ago. I was on graveyard, and the one thing I always remember are the slots players that would sit there for 12 plus hours. Many would completely lose track of the daytime. Some would cheat or piss themselves rather than leaving their special machine. Never saw one win any reasonable amount of money. Slots players are some of the saddest of any casino. I worked for 8 years at a casino in Northwest Indiana. All in the slot department. Most in management. Nightly. Someone pees themselves. Many times we had people sheet their pants and shake it out, leaving surprises. I've seen people spit, shoot their chew, and blow snot rockets wherever they want. I've seen people sitting frozen with a cigarette made entirely of ash, not smoking it. Machines were constantly broken by people punching them when they lose their money. And yet here are the 2 top stories I can tell. Number 2, we had a regular customer who had a tracheotomy. Sorry if that's spelled wrong. Who would use tips to clean out the hole, then leave them lying around. He would also leave Kleenex covered in goo. And was a chain smoker who would leave butts and ash everywhere. He was a high roller, so of course nothing was ever done about this. And the number one grossest thing ever. We had a gentleman one night who had an ulcer on his leg that while he was at the casino decided to break open. Of course he never said a thing. He just sat there bleeding all over the floor. It was an amazingly disgusting, horrifying mess and the guy could have cared less about it. Anyway. Thanks for letting me brighten your day. And go. Craps table at the Bellagio in Vegas about 7 years ago. Weekend night. Full tables. I've got a very nice guy. A real fun shooter to my left who's from Iraq. He's calling out the numbers in Arabic and teaching the whole table how to say them, and we're all having a blast and his run is going long. One Ashat keeps making asshole comments calling the guy camel jockey and towel head etc. But not too loud so the crew ignores him. The Ashat gets pissed that the Iraqi gentleman is winning pretty big. So he mouths off for all to hear that he's going to show him how an American will always win against an Arab. He proceeds to bet wrong. Playing the don't pass. Dropping small stacks of black chips each roll. After a dozen more tosses he's not won a single dime while the rest of the table is going crazy. Eventually he throws his remaining stack, $400 or so, on the table and starts yelling obscenities at the Iraqi gentleman. The crew has him hauled away. The stick man leans to me and says, "He just dropped $9,500. The shooter hears that and busts out laughing hard. He's out after over 20 rolls. Huge round of applause from the table for his run, which did us all very well. The Iraqi gentleman colors up and thanks us all. Tips the table generously and then tosses everyone on the rail a black chip, $100, and thanks us for a fun run. I'm checking out his stack and figure he walked away about $60,000 up. That was some class fun. Not a casino employee. But once I saw on a roulette table a dealer start throwing reds. Get this. 14 times. By the 10th time, there were a crowd of people gathering because the electronic board lights up with red numbers only. And people were betting on black number like crazy. By the 13th time, some guy walked up and bet the maximum, I think it was 10 grand, on marker. When the 14th red showed, the guy was pissed. I think he's been betting black starting on the 7th or 8th thread. So he's lost his pants on that one. Then just when the crow is getting out of control, there were so many people, the dealer threw a 000. So everyone who bet on either red or black lost all of their money. And just then, they switched dealer. Truth story. This was in Aladdin in Vegas. I interviewed at a casino for a director position. I have never worked at a casino, didn't end up getting the job. I'm walking around the floor in a suit because I arrived early. And apparently people are assuming I am an employee. A guy in a wheelchair sitting in front of a slot machine calls over to me. "Excuse me, sir." "Yes?" "Could you put this $20 bill in the machine?" I notice he's very disabled. He's holding his limbs at odd angles. His hand is crooked and his elbows are bent. Seemingly permanently. "Certainly." I put the money in the machine. This is the part that held me. "Can you position my hand over the 9 lines button? The max bet on a slot machine." "Certainly." I take his hand and place it on the button for him. "Thank you." "You're welcome." Gave me something to think about that night. This was not at a casino, but on my old college campus. Somehow I ended up in the basement of my building. No one really goes down there. Anyway, I walked past a boy who was in a wheelchair and somewhat in the condition you described. He was sitting in front of a vending machine and apparently had been struggling to put his money in. He said I was the first person to walk by in about half an hour. I put his change in for him and pressed 2 buttons. I could tell from his voice he was genuinely grateful and sorry for stopping me. I assured him I couldn't have been happier to help. I will never forget it. I live in Vegas and my mom used to be a casino dealer for a long time. Here's what ended up happening to her. She was working a graveyard shift dealing blackjack. This straggly looking coked out guy comes and sits down at her table and places a large sum of money, $5,000-ish, on the table. The pit boss comes over and okays it. My mom deals the cards. She's showing an ace of spades. She asks for insurance. The guy says insurance is for suckers. My mom flips over king of spades. The guy flips out. He reaches out over the table to get her, screaming at her saying, "You ducking cheating nigitch. I'm going to heal you." The pit bosses instantly grab him out of the air, slam him on the ground and subdue him. This is the first time something like that happened to my mom, so she was so shaken up they decided to give her the day off and let her go home. While she's in the employee parking garage getting into her car, she hears behind you, "I told you I'd heal you cheating nigitch." Sure as shit, same guy from before. Hits my mom in the back of the head with a pipe. Stomps her face. Kicks her face. She gets beaten to bad to the point where she can see her left eye hanging out of her face. With her right eye. She gets rushed to the hospital, and after several surgeries later, the entire right side of her face is made out of some kind of metal and she'll be visually impaired for the rest of her life. She always in pain, and even the gentle lights from the TV cause her severe amounts of pain. What happened to the guy, you may ask? Got off on some loophole by going to anger management and a gambling addiction center. In an awful thread. This is particularly awful. Long story, but it's one of my faves. I worked as bar back an upscale and expensive restaurant in AC casino. We had two huge old Italian guys work security on free Sat nights. They weren't security guards, but just big guys who could intimidate a marine. One night, this gigantic dude walks into the bar. He's like 6 feet 5, 300 pounds easily. He's got huge tattoos and a trashy lady on his side. One of the security guys, Sam, comes up to the bartender and asks if she can take care of this huge guy. So he gets free drinks and leaves a huge tip when he leaves. At the end of work, Sam calls the bartender and I over and explains the story of this huge dude. He was a hitman for the mob and was recently released from prison. Supposedly, this dude has murdered a dozen people, and on the 13th job he got caught and charged. Spent X amount of years in prison and had recently been released. Everyone always suspected Sam was in the mob, but that night we became pretty sure he was. I'm a maid at a casino hotel in Las Vegas, and the craziest thing I've ever seen was a ducking tiger in the bathroom. In 3 months, I've had 4 fights in my restaurant in the Venetian. Every one of them started with some guys deciding to go sit with some girls at another table. Most of them fizzle out pretty quickly. But of them was between 2 gigantic dudes. One of them, of course, drunk, started hitting on the others, 2 girlfriends, so 2 got up and jumped into one's booth. They proceeded to hockey brawl, one hand holding the shirt by the collar, the other swinging wildly at the other's face, for a solid 15 seconds. No one got the upper hand. Just kept punching and punching one-handed right in the face, back and forth like one-armed rock'em sock'em robots. They started to tire out in the short time that it took security to get there. So much to the point that one started to sit down. Hand to collar still. Face is still getting bashed, although at this point they were just kind of pity slapping with closed fists. Big guys have no stamina in fights. Security finally showed up and they stopped slapping with weak arms but wouldn't let go of each other's shirts. By then it wasn't interesting and I went back to waiting my tables. I've had 2 girls get into it over God knows what. One black girl got up and tried to run over to this other Asian girl. I know. That would have been epic, at another table, but slipped. Flew into the air and fell straight on her ass because the floors are super slick tile that are waxed every day. We were afraid she would get up and, being as upset as she already was, would sue. But she started crying and just walked right out. It was obvious at this point that she had wet herself somewhere in the excitement and fallen down as her leg was completely wet. Her friends paid the bill, without a tip. Itches, and chased after her. The Asian girls started going on and on about how if they had fought, how much they would have kicked their ass. I am a firm believer that all Asians know Kung Fu or some form of martial arts. So I would have loved to see it. But seeing some drunken club girl fall down and wet herself was good enough for me. This is the story of the first time I had ever seen someone get tased. Sorry for the wall of text. Me and a buddy were playing blackjack at Binion's up on Fremont. My buddy had never played. And we were enjoying the low $5 minimum bets. We are both horribly drunk. And my friend is having a hard time understanding the game. But it's fine since it's only me, him and the dealer. Suddenly, this guy comes and sits down next to us and asks us to move down so he can play multiple hands. We agree and move down to the far left hand seats, third base. This guy pulls out around $20,000 in $100 bills and has the dealer change all of them out. This takes about 10 minutes for the pit boss to come over, give the okay, and then he sits there to watch the action. Now, even though this table has a $5 minimum, it has a $1,000 maximum. This guy proceeds to bet $1,000 on 5 separate hands. The dealer deals out the cards to everyone and flips an ace high for his own hand. He asks for insurance, which we all decline, and then flips over a queen to show a blackjack. The guy sitting next to us gets visibly angry, but you can tell he is motivated to win his 5k back. Next hand, the dealer dishes out our cards, and both me and my buddy get a blackjack on our $5 bets. My buddy is stoked and drunkenly lets out his excitement in the form of a half grunt half yelp. The dude sitting with us gets even more upset. The dealer and a guy go through the process of determining hits and stays for his 5 hands, 2 of which the guy busts on. The dealer flips his cards, has to take another and ends up with 21. Guy loses his sheet at this point. This dude is yelling at the dealer, threatening him with physical violence and the sexual assault of his female family members. The pit boss gets on top of this right away, calls over security, maybe LVPD, and the dude starts pushing them around. The security guards are pretty quick on taser trigger, and they start juicing the guy up with loads of wonderful electricity. But this took a few jolts before he went down. The crowd that had gathered around at this point is pretty large, and me and my friend are completely hammered, still sitting at the table and watching this guy's night go from bad to worse 5 feet from us. Once the security team got the guy out of there, we realized he had left his remaining chips on the table. We asked the dealer what happens with the chips, and the pit boss was still standing there, and he came in and scooped them up. This was probably my only opportunity to scam Vegas out of some money, and we blew it by opening our mouths and not relying on our minimal ninja skills. TLDR, some guy got tased at a blackjack table because he couldn't handle losing 10k in less than 2 minutes. All of which happened 5 feet from me. Holy mother of sheet, this thread is depressing. I need to look at some cat pictures. A couple of things when I worked at a local Indian casino. A woman had a miscarriage in the line for the sandwich counter. A woman shat herself because she didn't want to lose her bingo seat. Edit. Forgot to mention Rodney King spending cash like it was going out of style. I worked on the Vegas Strip as a lifeguard for several seasons. The saddest parts of the casinos are not the people playing the machines or throwing the dice, but downstairs in the basement. The employee dining room. Best perk about working on the strip is you get free food. Not quality stuff, but it's free. And the employee lounge. The dealers and the bartenders go down there and they just look like they hate life so much that they have the noose ready to go at home. I'm not a dealer, but I do live in Vegas. I've seen men in speedos playing blackjack. Hong Kongian millionaires park their cars in the middle of the strip and just walk away. I saw a coy boy at South Point Casino piss himself and asked his buddy to go buy him some new pants. He didn't even seem drunk. I saw an elderly woman spit on about 10 slot machine chairs, claiming them maybe. But the best has to be, when I first moved here, I saw 3 bikers at the Luxor Casino robbing each other's hogs over the games in an elevator. I was working in the hotel side of the Isle of Capri Casino in Black Hawk, Colorado. I saw some weird sheet man. I won't lie. It was a few years back, so I don't remember some details. But here's a couple things. 1. Craziest by far was 4 drunk kids who got a hold of their dad's credit card, racked up $1,500 in room service, and had a food fight. With all of it, the final tally was like $16,000 in damage. I can't even describe the carnage. Salad in the jacuzzi jets. Potatoes and sheets stuck on the ceiling. I'm certain the comforter was missing, so I don't even know what they were doing on the bed that they felt the need to take it. I did a really poor job of describing it. I can't remember a whole lot, but it was incredible. 2. Some lady brought her cat into the hotel and there's a no pets policy. We were knocking on the door and could clearly hear her cat making some cat noise. But she just ignored us for a long time. Someone finally saw her leave. So security went in her room and there was no cat in there, but all of her stuff was still sitting around. Then we got a call from the front desk. She had stolen a housekeeper cart and was pushing it around with her cat on it, trying to get out the front door. It was a pretty big WTF.